This is the Wannabe Saints podcast, where we take virtues and try to break them down so they become tangible and applicable to your life.
We aren't here to bring you advice, we're here to bring you virtue. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rachel.
We're your hosts,
and this is Wannabe Saints. Awesome. All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for Dr. Breuninger for joining us on our podcast today. Please help Jordan and I to ask the right questions, help Dr. Breuninger to articulate and share all the knowledge that and wisdom that he has related to the theology of healing and virtue. And we just pray and ask that you be the fourth person in this conversation as we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Amen. Welcome back to Wannabe Saints, everybody. We are here today with a special guest, Dr. Matthew Breuninger. He was my professor back at Franciscan, and in my short time there, I took as many classes as I could of his because I just fell in love with the way that he teaches and all the knowledge that he had to share. Dr. Breuninger, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Well, thanks. That was beautiful. Thank you. Dr. Matt Breuninger. I'm a psychologist, licensed psychologist in the state of Ohio. I taught at Franciscan University for 9 years before leaving and going into full-time private therapy practice. And so I have a group therapy practice here in Steubenville, Wellspring Counseling and Coaching. And now we have 6 beautiful kiddos. I have a beautiful wife, my beautiful wife Brittany, and we live on a little farm now. We're doing the homestead thing. So we milk cows, and we have some sheep and chickens and ducks, and
that's awesome.
Full a busy life, but a busy life, but a beautiful life. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
awesome. So Dr. B is joining us today to kind of go over some different things. He gave a talk back when I was in college on the theology of healing that changed my life personally. And so we're going to kind of hit on some of that, maybe hit on some virtue. But why don't you just give people a little bit of a background? Like, I know that you have like a pretty cool conversion story, and which is, if I remember correctly, kind of where you encountered theology and the healing of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I sort of grew up nominally Catholic, and, when I was younger, kind of had maybe a faith as a child, but certainly in high school and into college, just sort of lost my moral compass, like I wasn't going to mass, I wasn't frequenting the sacraments, and I was sort of morally and spiritually bankrupt, and all the stuff that comes along with that, you know what I mean? Like, just all of it. And so I went to college. I was in Washington, D.C. I went to Georgetown for about a year and a half, and I just couldn't hang. Like, my life was just falling apart. It was crumbling. I was hurting so badly. Not only myself, but then I was hurting other people so much. And I ended up dropping out of school, coming home, and having a pretty profound conversion experience. And just really wanting to dedicate my life to trying to grow closer to God and to understand my identity as a beloved son. And then I took a winding path, like from there to get to psychology. But I wanted to learn more about the faith. So I had this conversion. I wanted to learn more about the faith. So I thought I was going to like a catechetics program. And so I ended up getting into the master's program down at Ave Maria University. And I showed up, and we have to take like 2 years of Latin, and we're reading St. Thomas Aquinas. And I had never read Thomas Aquinas. And like, it was like drinking out of a fire. They were like doing theology, And here I thought I was just going to like read the catechism and learn a little bit about, but what was beautiful about that was it opened up so many questions for me, sort of psychological questions. And one of the areas that really was interesting to me was this idea of virtue and virtue formation and habit formation. And so we're reading about the virtue of patience or the virtue of temperance or the virtue of courage. And I just had all these questions about like, how does somebody's narrative, their story, how does abuse, um, how might like psychological avoidance or emotional numbing, how might these shape or influence or be barriers to the way we're called to grow in virtue? Um, it seems easy to just say like, I don't know, be patient. Like if it was, the patient
Right.
man does patient acts, you're like, okay, great. Like I would have, sometimes understanding sort of the deep roots and barriers, the psychological and emotional roots and barriers to virtue, or that underlie or give rise to some of our vices, can be really helpful if we want to grow in virtue. And so that actually kicked off for me this idea of like how the psychology and virtue interact. How do they interact? Made me want to go get a degree in psychology. And so I went off to Baylor. I got my doctorate at Baylor in Waco, Texas, home of Chip and Joanna Gaines. And and then I started teaching, and it's just been a beautiful unfolding and understanding and deepening along the way.
Yeah, amazing. And how long have you had your private practice for now?
So I've had the private practice now for about 4.5 years, but
Okay.
I've been in private. So I sort of had it while I was teaching, but I wasn't really practicing myself. I just had other therapists. But I've been in my own sort of private practice seeing clients full time now for about a year.
Okay, cool. Amazing.
Loving it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if somebody, or actually, let's go back to this. So what first led you to realizing that there is a guaranteed way of like healing?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'm not sure there is. Do I think there is? Did I say there is?
Oh, so I feel, well, you kind of gave, was it 4 steps or 5 steps to healing?
Yeah, I gave 5 steps.
Okay. So like this like 5-step healing process, it's kind of like if you do these things, the Lord's not going to tell you no to healing, right? Like,
yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, okay, so this is, I think, a really important caveat, because I think my definition of healing, I hear lots of definitions of healing sort of in the Catholic space. And I want to say that the definition I give, and I give a couple, but one of the definitions I use for healing is to be healed is to be free to love the way God created you to love, and to receive love the way God created you to receive love. To be healed is to have the freedom to love and to receive love. That's it. And so that's really important, because it doesn't mean that all my anxiety goes away. It doesn't mean that all of my sadness goes away. It doesn't mean that I don't have intrusive thoughts sometimes, or a traumatic memory doesn't pop up, or it means that those things aren't the center of my life in a way anymore that block me from loving freely, receiving others, giving to others. They're not the center of my life. Yeah. And so I think that's important, because I think sometimes when we talk about like healing, we think like, I'm not going to suffer anymore. And that, if that was the guarantee, one, I'd be a very, very wealthy man. But two, I'd also be a liar, right? I'd be a liar, because we're promised the cross and there is suffering. And so that's the first thing. I think another definition of healing is to be able to suffer well. I'm healed to the extent that I can suffer well. Or what I mean by suffer well is, I mean, not have to react or avoid or structure my life to avoid suffering and pain. It's to be healed is to be able to encounter suffering and suffer well. And sometimes suffering well means drawing boundaries. Sometimes suffering well means holding my fear and anxiety. Sometimes suffering well means being able to connect with others in the pain and ask them to help me co-regulate. But so to that extent, if that's what we mean by healing, then yeah, I think that's what the Lord desires for us. I think He desires for us. We've been made to be able to love well and receive love well. And so I will say, in the book, so I wrote a book based on that talk, and I break it out into 6 steps. And those steps are simply intended to help dispose you to be in a place where you can have a new, profound experience of God and God's grace, and to go wherever he wants to lead you from that point. And that doesn't mean all of your sadness is going to go away. It doesn't mean you're going to have great It means that you're able to follow his voice in a way that you previously weren't free to.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the way I tend to think about it is that we have blocks or barriers. We put up self-protections, and for good reasons. We've learned over time, we've been so hurt and wounded by others. There's so much pain. We're really fascinating, adaptive creatures, and we've learned how to protect myself so I don't have to feel that pain, that suffering, so I don't have to have that wound touched. And the ways that we learn to protect ourselves oftentimes serve as barriers, unintentionally, to the love and intimacy that God wants for us. Also the love and intimacy that other people, like, we want to share with others. It's like a huge part of marriage therapy is helping people identify their self-protection strategies that prevent them from having the kinds of connection they desire. But I think that's true with us and God. And so the steps are aimed at helping you identify these protection strategies that are like a barrier to like the dynamic action of God's grace in your life. And then after that, the book is sort of like, now whatever God does with that, that's between you and him now. But now the blocks have been identified and you have a patterned way of living. This is the other thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet. I think that I don't think healing is a one-time event. I mean, it can be, right? It can be. You know, you have all this pain and suffering, and just miraculously it's taken away. That can happen, and it does happen. There's also another kind of healing that is like, it's a daily reprieve. It's a daily way of living where I wake up each day and I commit myself to a certain way of living, and I open myself and I say, Lord, these are my protection strategies, and they've been with me for a long time, and I'm asking you to take them to the extent that they get in my way of serving you today. And then throughout the day, I try to be aware of when I notice them. When are they coming up? And I go, Lord, this protection's getting in the way. Remove it so that I can love the way you want me to. And I notice it, I name it, I ask God to remove it, and then I recommit myself to trying to be of maximum service. God, what do you want of me now?
Yeah.
And so in that it's like daily. Yeah. Question.
What would you say to somebody who's like struggling to even like know what their problem even is? Like,
yeah.
Like they're struggling, but they're like, I don't know what's wrong. I like they can't even identify what is even going on, and they're just like, I'm not myself. Something is wrong.
Great.
Where do I go? What do I do?
That's great. Here's why that's a great question. Because even in therapy, so there's all these different. So when you go see a therapist, they most likely have what's called a theoretical orientation or a therapeutic modality. They've got some way that they think about problems and how problems arise, and then how you treat those problems. But you could go see 5 different therapists, and they could more or less tell you 5 different things. Now, they might all agree you have depression, but depending on what theory they practice, they might sort of tell you why you have depression, right, is different. So one would say, oh, you have all these maladaptive, depressive thoughts. You have thoughts about helplessness and hopelessness. It's your thoughts that are the problem. Another might say, it's because you're engaged in too much experiential avoidance. And by avoiding suffering, you end up living a life of sort of meaninglessness. All you focus on is suffering. And so life ends up sort of feeling meaningless. And then another might say, well, it's because you have these deep emotions and attachment needs, and you've never had anyone to share them with. They've always been thwarted. And so you've learned to be quiet and hold your own emotions, and you have no one to co-regulate these feelings. Okay. So the reason it's a great question is because you could get a lot of answers to the why. And I think the truth is all of those answers can be somewhat true. Because we're an integrated body-soul composite, regardless of what door you go in, whether you go in the thoughts or the behaviors or the emotions, regardless of which door you focus on, the effect is on the whole person. So if I focus on your emotions and we go in that door and that's how I'm thinking about the problem, as we address your emotions, your thoughts and your behaviors change. If we focus on your behaviors, some people say, well, you're depressed because you're not going out, you're not doing rewarding things, you're not. If we focus on your behaviors, your emotions and your thoughts change. If we focus on your thoughts, right? So in some sense, the good news is no matter where you start, it has an effect on the whole person. But that still doesn't quite answer your question, which is like, because if you go to a therapist, they can sort of point it out. I guess what I'm saying is, in my book, I tell a story about one of the ways that I think problems arise. It's sort of my theory, and it's rooted in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's rooted in Catholic theology. It's rooted in attachment, some of the attachment literature. It's rooted in some of the acceptance and commitment therapy literature. And I take those pieces and I kind of bring them together into a story about how I think wounds arise. And so for me, I think wounds are deprivations of love. Like we get wounded when we're not loved the way we were created to be loved. And I try to mark out how I think you were made to be loved. You were made to be esteemed and valued and wanted and to have connection and to have your bodily needs met and to have, right? So when those things aren't met, wounds arise. And I think that's oftentimes what gets us in trouble isn't the wound itself, it's the protection we build up around it. We go, oh, that's so painful. I don't want to feel this way again. I don't want to get bullied. I don't want to get mocked. So I learn how to show up in a way that I don't have to feel the pain. And it's that self-protection that oftentimes leads me to ultimately feeling depressed or anxious, or that's the story I tell in the book about how I think it works. I think our self-protections are predominantly the problem. Mm-hmm. If that resonates with you and you're like, yeah, I get it, that makes sense, use it, run with it. But if that doesn't quite make sense, but the cognitive stuff does, you're like, no, it's all about my thoughts, right? Unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings. Like I need to just sort of have more rational, my thoughts need to be more rational. They need to fit the evidence. It's a very cognitive behavioral therapy approach. Great, if that's what resonates with you, go with that. Part of what I'm saying is I want you to find the story that makes the most sense out of what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And if the story is my book, the way I talk about it, well, then use that. If the story is a cognitive behavior, a friend of mine, Jerry Crete, just published a book called Litanies of the Heart. It uses this therapy called internal family systems. If internal family systems, that language helps you make sense of what's happening to you, use that. I guess the key here would be, how do we find out what's wrong? How do we know where to start? Start looking at books and resources and talks and find the one that actually clicks for you and you go, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And generally, not all, but generally speaking, as you unfold the process, it'll have an effect on your whole person. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a cognitive, behavioral, or emotionally focused therapy, it will have an effect on your whole person because we're an integrated creature.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Totally.
So if like this person, they realize like listening to this, that it makes sense that they have these walls and they're acting out of self-preservation. What piece of advice would you give them to kind of starting to battle those things? Would it be kind of that prayer that you were just saying where you wake up every day and you're like, I see this thing, like help me to remove it? Or is there like another?
I think the first thing is actually admitting that we're actually suffering. I mean, I think it's Peter Kreeft says something like, we're all part of this universal cover-up where we walk around and act like we're all good, like we're not suffering. Like, I'm sure people watch your podcast and they're like, you guys are thriving. You look like you're thriving. Like I'm sure they look and just go like, these girls don't get it. They don't know. They don't suffer. You know, like you look like you have a bunch of friends. You look like you go out on Friday nights and have fun. You look like you're smart. You look like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure people look at you and I think people sometimes look at me and they think, well, he's got, you know, the truth is we're all sort of covering up our suffering. And it doesn't all have to be the deepest suffering, but there's these little sufferings, there's big sufferings, there's things in our past. So I think the first step is actually admitting to ourselves that we are suffering. I am in pain. There is pain here. There is suffering here. That's the first step. I think the next step is pretty important, at least for me. It's to take an honest look at like my image of God, who I think God is. And the reason I think that's important is because when do I lower my self-protection? When do I lower my self-preservation? I lower it in the face of love and safety. If I think you're going to hurt me, I'm not lowering my self-protection. I'm not lowering my self-preservation. I'm keeping it up. I'm keeping the mask up, the facade up, the fig leaf on, whatever the language you want to use for it is, but I'm staying protected. But I'll lower it in the face of love. And so part of what I try to recommend in the steps is if we can come to see and view God as like so loving and tender and nurturing, and it's actually the kind of place, the kind of relationship in which I'd want to lower some of those self-protections and risk being seen and known. It's really hard to admit my self-protections when I'm afraid somebody's going to hurt me. And so the second step is I think people need to look at their image of God and whether or not they actually think that God is safe and loving and nurturing and tender. And because very often our image of God is shaped by our early childhood relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Very often.
Totally.
And so I have to take an honest look at that. Second, the third thing I have to do is I have to learn my protections. Like I got mine, like I know mine now. They're like, and I can start to see when they come out. A big one for me is like competence. When I feel insecure or afraid or scared, I go up into like competent mode. I know stuff. What do you need? What do you like? So for me, knowing that, oh, now when I'm in competence mode, I want to be the guy that knows everything. I want to be in charge. That makes it really hard to have relationships with people. It makes it really hard to receive love and help from people. It makes it really hard to, and when somebody doesn't want to listen to all this awesome knowledge I have, then I get real resentful. Like, how dare you not listen? Like, don't you know that I'm, right? And all I'm trying to do is protect myself from feeling insecure and small. But I've learned my self-protections. And so I think the third step is actually learning yours, looking through your life and starting to learn what are the ways that I show up in self-protection and self-preservation. Talking too much, talking too little, being really intellectual, pretending you're stupid, being self-deprecating, getting quiet. Like there's all these ways we've learned to guard and protect and hide our hearts so that we don't get hurt. And some of them actually look really good on the surface. That's the problem. The problem is when somebody shoots heroin, you're like, self-protection. Like that one seems pretty clear and it seems pretty clear it's bad. But like the person who works 80 hours a week, 85 hours a week, he's crushing it. She's crushing it. CEO of a company, runs her own multi-million-dollar business. That's hard to be like, oh, self-protection, right? Like, why do I work so hard? Very often the things that we do to protect ourselves actually look very attractive on the surface and we get rewarded for them, which can make it tricky to be honest with ourselves about. I will say that's why each of the steps in the book has a virtue to pray for. As you go through that step, you're praying the virtue that's needed to do that step well, like courage, like prudence, like wisdom, like, but then, I think the third step is you have to come to know your particular self-protection. You got to know and be able to be honest. But when I show up in the world, a whole bunch of times I'm showing up protected, even if it looks good on the surface. I'm not free. When I'm in self-protection mode, I'm not free.
Mm-hmm. So 2 questions. I'm just going to say them both just so that you guys can help me go back so I don't forget them. So one of the questions I want to hit on is how do our experiences with our parents shape the way we experience God? Because you briefly brought that up. And I think that's something that's worth talking about. 100%. And then the other question is, and if you want to hit on this right now, just because it kind of fits maybe, is do you know much about virtue signaling and that popular term? So I feel like that's kind of fitting to what you're talking about right now, because this idea that it looks like people are killing it. Can you maybe explain to people what virtue signaling is, and like maybe if that can also be a way of a self-preservation.
Yeah. So maybe your first question about attachment. So there's this idea in comes out of John Bowlby and others in psychology called attachment. And the idea here is that when children are born, they're these really helpless, dependent creatures, and that in times of threat or distress, in times of danger, children naturally orient toward their caregiver for emotional regulation and safety, right? And you see this really easily in children. So I don't know, a child falls, or a child's sick or tired or overwhelmed, and they're crying, and their mom or dad goes and picks them up and goes, shh, 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 I got you. And immediately the baby calms down, right? That would be a secure attachment. That means that in times of threat or distress, their caregiver is able to signal safety and security. I got you, you're safe, like I'll regulate your central nervous system. And if we have safe and secure attachment figures, we develop something called a secure internal working model. Now, internal working models are templates or patterns for how you fundamentally think relationships work. And they're not taught to you in words. Your internal working model is through experience. It's the air you breathe. It's when you were scared or sad, were you able to be scared or sad in your home? When you felt anxious or uncertain, were you able to share that? Were your needs met? Were you met with tenderness and love and understanding, even when you were having big feelings? Or were you met with dismissiveness? Were you met with anger? Were you met with avoidance? Were you met with anxiousness? And so depending on how your early childhood caregivers met you, you've developed this sort of pattern or blueprint for how you think relationships work. So that is, I mean, it's the way you see the world. It's like your glasses. It's like how you think things work. And so naturally, when we talk about God as Father, it's like, oh yeah, no, I know how those relationships, I know how fathers think about sons. I know what that relationship looked like. I felt it. I lived it. And so, I think one thing for me, a really simple example, but growing up, anxiety. Now, my dad never said this, by the way, but I learned pretty early on that anxiety wasn't acceptable. And I learned it because every time I would be really anxious or scared, and I'd go to my dad, he'd be like, dude, here's what you need to do. Get big, get up in his face, tell him you're going to punch him in the head. He was like, do something about it. Like, fix it, right? He never said to me, dude, I'm sorry, that's scary. That's so tough. That is scary, isn't it? I totally get how you feel anxious. Instead, it was like, handle your business. Now, what that meant was when I go into my relationship with God, I don't have any conception of a God who can hold or handle my anxiety. It's not even in my framework. Like, Matt, did you tell God about your fear? I'm like, what? No, what? I don't even know how to think about that. I can't even imagine how God would respond to me if I said I'm afraid. So beginning to understand our early sort of childhood experiences and realize that this oftentimes do you think you have to perform for God? Do you think God can handle your anger? Was anger acceptable in your family? Did it either get shut down, or maybe only one parent was allowed to be angry, or maybe when you got angry, they yelled too? Those shape how you think about how God's going to approach your anger, how God's going to hold your feelings, how God's going to, can he handle your distrust? Okay, so it's all about this internal working model that has been shaped by these early childhood experiences. And it so deeply impacts how we see and experience God. Because by the way, at Franciscan, and you ask students, describe God to me. And they all say, oh, he's a good father. He's loving, he's merciful, he's tender, he's Dr. B, right? But if I could crack open their hearts, and when they're sitting in my office and they're being honest, so many of them say they're terrified that God's up there with his finger on the smite button waiting to punish them, or that he's distant, that he doesn't care, that he's abandoned. The actual feeling or experience of God is very different than the cognitive sort of catechetical learning they've done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that felt experience is what I'm talking about with attachment. Attachment is safety and security in your bones. And we're called to have that with God. We're not just supposed to think that God is nice, right? We're meant to feel it. We're meant to experience every fiber of our being safe, loved, nurtured. Okay. The virtue signaling question, as far as I can tell, I'm sure there's technical definitions of virtue signaling, but virtue signaling tends to be maybe one of two things. One is like signaling to others through overt actions or language that you're on like the right moral side of something. And so, depending on what the particular topic is, virtue signaling is like, I type a post on Facebook and I say, whatever. I don't even want to wade into a hypothetical because it will offend somebody. But I say something like, of course, so excited to be able to donate my $10 to save the whales this month. That's a safe one. And it's a way of signaling like, see, I'm on the side of animal rights and I'm on the right side. Yeah. I think overwhelmingly that sort of stuff comes out of a place of self-protection. Now, I'll say this too. Part of the reason I use the language self-protection, self-preservation, I think another word for those is sin. What I mean by that though is self-protection, self-preservation is me saying, God, I'm going to do things my way to get what I want, how I want it, to the extent I want it, and I'm keeping you out of it. But one of the reasons I use the language of self-protection is because it actually helps us understand that our behaviors make sense. They make sense. My vices, my sins, they make sense. And so when somebody's virtue signaling, what are they telling me? Now, it's like it's a self-protection. And they might be saying like, I just never felt affirmed. And when they virtue signal on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram and they get 1 billion likes, how good that feels. When I use the language of self-protection, self-preservation, it actually allows me to have compassion toward people because I realize that this behavior that I'm seeing on the surface, it actually is being driven by a deep fear, like I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not. And so they're looking for affirmation, they're looking for somebody to reassure them, they're looking for, oh, I get that. You're so scared inside you're not enough, you're so afraid that nobody cares. But when you get those clicks and likes, when you signal virtue and everyone's like, oh my gosh, great job, yes, save the whales. It feels good, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad I found a safe one. I'm glad I found a safe one. So it's like, I often think a lot of things like that are driven by our self-protection, self-preservation. If I wasn't delighted in enough growing up, and you were made to be delighted in. Look, I think so many of our sins, so many of our vices are these self-protections that cover our wounds. I work with a lot of young men who look at pornography and struggle with lust and masturbation. Oftentimes, not always, but very often you can see this path where they never felt desired growing up. They didn't feel wanted. And I think you're made to feel wanted. I think non-sexual desire, when we walk in a room as kids, did we feel wanted? Like somebody wants us and they just love us and we're like, we feel it. And they want to take care of us and we just feel like this. I think if we don't have that, at least to a moderate amount growing up, we go looking for it. We need it. We want to feel desired. We're made to feel desired. We're creatures made in the image and likeness of God. We're gifts. We're made to be desired. To have our dignity seen and appreciated. And when we don't have that, we look for it. And I think pornography can be a place where feels protective. It feels like I'm getting this thing, this deep place in me, this wound that's sort of festering. I'm getting that need met. Now in a sort of false way, but like with virtue signaling, underneath, I think there's oftentimes some wound. And it seems to me virtue signaling is something about being approved of, getting applause or praise, Or it can also be, I think, fear of not being, or fear of sort of being attacked, or being like, if I can get out ahead of it and show you that I'm on the right side of this issue. Well, for me and my family, we didn't get or we did get like whatever all the COVID stuff is coming up again because Fauci's on trial, or Fauci just testified in front of Congress. And so COVID was a wild time because depending on what camp you were in, usually split along political lines, not always, but often, you virtue signaled by saying you either did or didn't get the vaccine. Oh, I got the vaccine, or I didn't get the vaccine. And that's how you signaled sort of that you were on the right moral side. And people were writing this stuff publicly, and you're sort of telling it to your friend, and you're, but it seems to me that some part of that, right, is either a desire for approval or applause, right? Or a desire of being afraid of like being on the wrong side. I get really afraid. And when I get afraid, I want to show people that I'm enough. And so like, this was a way of being like, no, I'm in, don't kick me out. So sometimes even these sorts of things can be driven by this deep fear of being like, I don't know, kicked out, disconnected from people, not having, not being able to keep the relationships you want. And so again, for me, the motivation matters quite a bit here. Like, why am I saying this? Why am I doing it? Really understanding, having the kind of self-knowledge and reflection to say, why did I do that? What was I doing there? Was I trying to protect something? Was I acting out of like a wound? Was I trying to avoid some sort of suffering here by doing this? I think really slowing down for all of us, really learning to slow down and start to understand and ask ourselves questions, not in a critical, judgmental sort of, but just like in a curious way. Like, what am I doing? Why did I say that just now? And not sort of in a scrupulous rumination way either, where I'm just gonna like obsess about, but just in a sort of gentle, curious way. Like, I opened my mouth, I told a joke. Why did I tell a joke there? Oh, I was actually feeling nervous. That's a go-to for me. Almost every talk I give, I start with a joke. I gave a talk yesterday at Catholic Family Event. I opened with a joke. It's to make me feel less nervous. Now it works. It works, and it hasn't had any consequences, but just at least understanding that in myself, right? I try to always find one thing that I can open with that's sort of funny, softens the audience, I laugh, I feel more relaxed, and I go. But it's driven by anxiety. Like, what would it be like for me to just walk in and just start from like a really sincere, authentic place? You know, really paying attention to why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. So you often have talked about the lies we begin to believe because of our wounds. And what are some of the most common lies people carry?
Yeah. I think one of the deepest lies is like, I'm not lovable. I'm not wanted. I'm not valuable. I think those are some of the deepest and most common lies that I see. Some version of that. There's other ones like I'm not going to get out of it. There's no hope. I'm not going to get out of this. I'm going to feel this way forever. But some of like the identity lies, some of the most common, like, I'm not lovable.
Do you think that comes from like the attachment part of like the baby and all of that, or?
Well, I think it can. Yeah, I think it can. It can be rooted in attachment experiences, certainly, but it can also just be rooted in, again, generally, I think our wounds are failures to be loved the way we're created to be loved. And so I think what ends up happening is we have so many experiences in our life that kind of signal to us, right? I'm not so, and they can be big things, little things, but like your dad, your parents are divorced, your dad's supposed to pick you up and he doesn't show up. And your boyfriend forgets your anniversary. And you had this group of friends and you thought you were close and they went out one night without you and they didn't tell you and you saw the pictures on Instagram. And these are all like little wounds, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wounds precisely because like you weren't loved the way you were created to be loved. You weren't cherished, nurtured, desired, connected. Like, and so I think when we have wounds actually oftentimes get translated in our mind to, I'm not lovable. If I was lovable, this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
You know? And so I think it's the nature of being wounded that these types of beliefs, sort of a wounded heart, a deeply wounded heart alone can be a real fertile ground for a belief that I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
The
definitely.
wounded heart alone. Now, with the love of others and with Christ and with the wounded heart, like, can know itself and can heal and can see its true identity. But the wounded heart alone, it's really easy to think like, I mustn't be lovable. Now, that's a terrible thought and feeling. We hate that. And so very few people can actually say that out loud. Very few people would actually know. Like, we lay, that's so painful. To actually feel that I'm not lovable, to be at that level of your being and to say that and mean it is so painful that's exactly what our self-protection, self-preservation strategies do. They prevent me from having to feel that deep feeling that's in me. And so I structure my life so that it doesn't get activated or triggered and so that's why on the surface, it looks like it's all good. I'm fine. I'm thriving. I've got a 4.0 GPA. I'm, head of the football team. I'm going to Science Olympiad. I'm blah, 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 like whatever. I'm a focused missionary. I work at a parish. I do. And like that can look really attractive, but what it can be is it can be layers of cover and protection that help me not have to feel, that try to convince me that, no, I really am lovable. See, look. But deep down, this deep core lie, wound, that's one of the most common and deepest ones.
Yeah, no, that was great. Kind of going back to talking about like your relationship with your parent, reflecting your relationship with God.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there was a couple parents that maybe listened to that and were like reflecting on themselves and going, "Oh crap!" Like
Yeah,
about
hopefully.
their own parenting to their
Hopefully.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like that, whether they're yelling or
Yeah.
they're dismissive or whatever the
Yes.
case is. Like, can you speak maybe to the parent that's listening that's like going, "Oh crap," right now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And it's funny because it comes out even in positive things. And what I mean by that is I'll work with people whose parents are like the child or the teenager will have a problem. And the parent will be like, no, hey, it's okay. Look, it's okay. We're going to. And like the parent in a desire to help the child ends up sort of subtly dismissing the child's feelings and like trying to make it good. No,
Like
don't hurt.
distract from
Yeah.
the problem.
That's right. No, it's okay. Now, what that tells me is like, oh, you can't handle me. You can't handle my problems. It's not okay to be sad in front of you. It's not. So even in good things, like you'll have parents who say, no, I don't yell. I don't do this. I don't do that. But okay, so hopefully there's some parents saying, oh crap. And that's a great thing because the truth is that's the moment we begin to see that we have been shaped by our experiences and that we do sometimes pass on these wounds and punch holes in the souls of our children if we're not sort of growing in self-knowledge and self-awareness. And so 2 book recommendations. First, one's called The Whole Brain Child, and the other is called No Drama Discipline. These are really beautiful books about the importance of learning how to regulate your children's emotions and show up in a parenting way that signals safety and security. Now, this does not mean that you don't have consequences. This isn't sort of like whatever the worst version of gentle parenting is. It's not that. Like kids need boundaries, kids need parameters, kids need consequences. But learning how to establish a safe, secure relationship, safety. You can come to me, you can talk to me, you're not too much for me. I help regulate you. Even if there's a correction or a consequence, first we connect. Because this matters so much to me, right? We connect first and I can handle you. So those 2 books I think are game changers. But the second thing is, here's the good news. attachment patterns or internal working models aren't fixed. They're not fixed. They don't change overnight. You don't just tell your child one time, hey, I love you, and it's like all good. But they can be reshaped. They can be reshaped. And pivoting now and learning how to show up for your child in a way that signals safety and security, that signals trust, that signals I can hold and handle all of you. There's no part of you that you have to cut off or deny in order to stay in relationship with me. Like, I want you, all of you. And I delay. So the 5 S's of attachment sometimes, one way of thinking about attachment is you're seen, safe, soothed, secure, and supported. Like, I see you, I see what you actually need. And you're safe, I'm not gonna hurt you physically. And I soothe you, I calm you when you're distressed, when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you're anxious, and you're secure. You can bring all of your emotions to me. Nothing's off the table. And you're supported. I see your uniqueness, and I actually want to encourage that uniqueness. I don't want to make you in my image. So parents can begin to learn this, and they can start to regulate themselves and realize when they're showing up dysregulated so that they can better show up for their children. But those 2 books changed how I parented, and then beginning to do my own work. What I mean is like learning and starting to really pay attention to how I parent and why. Why did I just get frustrated there? Why did I just talk to my child like they were a bother or a nuisance? What's happening? I feel afraid. We're running late. I think bedtime's going to be really hard if we're out too late. It's going to be exhausting. I'm going to get tired. Oh, I'm afraid. And when I get afraid, I get controlling and intense. Okay, I have to calm myself down first. All right, it's going to be fine. I can sleep in tomorrow. It's all good, Matt. Like, I can go to my wife and say, babe, I need a hug. I'm dreading bedtime tonight. She gives me a hug. And I'm okay. And now I can actually show up and enjoy my children and help them navigate their little world, which they need me for, without controlling and going crazy because I'm so afraid. And so here's the good news. We are called to heal. You're called to grow. Your kids are a mirror for you. It's precisely what they do. They point out these parts where you need to grow.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say on that, it's like, I feel like the hard thing about parenting, my son is 3, or he's almost 3, and I have a 8-month-old. But this season that he's in is like tantrums and things like that. So it's the balance of like, I don't want to stifle your emotion and make you not feel like you're not allowed to act a certain way, but I also don't want to somehow make you think the world revolves around you and you become a selfish child either.
Okay.
So it's finding that balance of like not stifling emotion, but not the world revolves around you.
Okay, let me give you my thought on this really quick. 2 things. You're a saint in the making, because a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, that's so hard. That is like 3-year-olds are tough, right? And then okay. So one thing I think with tantrums, part of what I want to do with tantrums is I just want to calm them down. I just want to, hey. And what I do, reflect and validate what's happening. So like, my kid doesn't get a chocolate chip cookie for breakfast, and he starts melting down.
Right? Exactly.
And I'm going to start, like, there's a couple different options here. One is like, knock it off. One is like, oh, baby. Another is like, wow, that's so hard, isn't it? It's so disappointing. Yeah, no, I know. You really want it. You do. You really want it. I get it. I love chocolate chip cookies. They're so good. Yeah? Yeah, I want it. You never give me. Yeah, baby, they are so good. I know. Listen, I'm trying to calm his little central nervous system down, right? Now, I'm not going to give in just because he's crying.
Right.
I'm not going to get him the cookie, but I am going to know, I'm going to let him know, like, yeah, dude, this is hard. That's like the equivalent of somebody like, I don't know, like taking my retirement account and just being like, I'm going to walk, like, what? No, like, don't you, like, and being like, no, stop, don't worry about it. Like, for a 3-year-old, that is huge, right? And so I think trying to let him see, I get how big this is for you. This is big, but I got you. It's okay. You should try to calm him down. Now, here's the other point I'll say. I actually think it's really important that little kids, and take this, I think it's really important that they actually feel like they're the center of the world when they're children. Because if they don't, they'll try to be the center of the world when they're adults.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a very natural developmental state where your child is supposed to just feel like this. Now, by center of the world, I don't mean they get everything but what I mean is when they share a need, express a need, have some sort, they know that mom sees me.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's different than mom gives me everything I want or everything I ask for. But when my 5-year-old says, I want a lollipop, I don't just like, stop being selfish. I say, dude, I know. Hey, I know. Or when my child's trying to get my attention, but I'm on the phone, I don't get off the phone, but I pause. I say, hey, excuse me 1 sec. And I go, hey, buddy, daddy's on the phone. I see you and I'll be right there. Okay. I'm going to help you. I promise. I'm going to finish my phone call. He knows that what I see with some parents is their kids tugging on their shirt, tugging. The parents ignoring them.
Knock it
right?
off.
Yeah, they're right. They're either swatting them or they ignore them. And they ignore them until the behavior gets so big that they turn and lose it on them. Like, I don't want my kid to think he's the center of the world. No, I think it's really healthy when a kid expresses a need or to turn and say, hey, I see you, and I'm going to help you in a minute, okay? I want to help you in a minute, but I'm going to finish my phone call, and as soon as I'm done, I'll help you. Very often when you do that, the kid's like, okay.
Yeah, totally.
Right? But if I
You're
ignore
actually
it,
very good at that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
hell yeah, I bet.
Mhm.
Dude, yeah, when I ignore it, they send the signal louder, right? And then you blow up on them, or you dismiss. It's by trying not, but like in some ways, by turning them, I say, you are the center of my universe. You are, like, I see you. Once a kid learns, though, that it's normal to get healthy attention when they express a need, they don't feel the need in adulthood to act crazy, become a narcissist, act like this, right? Like,
Right.
if they can be the center of attention in a healthy way,
Right.
which is like when I express something, mom sees it, she acknowledges it, even if she can't do it right now or can't give it to me. I am seen. When they get that healthy being seen in childhood, they don't look for it in unhealthy ways in adulthood. So keep it up. You're doing it, mom. Like you got this. But that's
Thanks.
that's great. Yeah.
Great advice. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You always gave great parenting advice. I don't even have kids, and I'd be like, so here's a situation with my nieces and nephews that my sister's asking about.
I remember. I actually remember you asking for your sister.
Yeah. Yep. Sure did.
That's
A
so
couple
funny.
times. I was like, she's like, will you ask your professor? And I was like, yeah, I got you. Let me go to his office hours and bug him for
Dude, I
parenting
love
advice,
it.
not
I'm
about
just
my
gonna need to
child.
start texting you. Hey, what do I do?
Yeah.
I love it.
Help.
Dude, I
Oh,
love
so
it.
good. I've always told
Yeah.
him that he needs to write a book on parenting.
Okay, the next 2 books I'm writing one on fatherhood and one on marriage.
Ooh.
One on marriage. I'm doing a lot of marriage therapy now, and I'm loving it. And I want to write a book on marriage.
Write me down for pre-orders. I'll take them both.
Yeah. I love it. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean, and what does it actually feel like to live in the freedom Christ promises?
yeah,
He's like, way to give me the easy one to end on.
Sorry to hold you up.
yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, here's the God's honest answer. The answer is I've tasted. The answer is I've tasted it in part. I haven't tasted the fullness of it. But the parts that I've tasted, there's a for me, it's a feeling of like deep rootedness. I know who I am. I'm okay with myself. I'm like, feels like there's a transparency in me. Like I'm not pretending. I'm fully me. And life feels like it has such deep meaning and purpose. I feel so connected. I feel like I'm able to like live out meaning and purpose, that each interaction is like pregnant with purpose and meaning, and suffering feels like it's got meaning, even if I can't appreciate it, even if I can't understand it in the moment. But it's this feeling of like being grounded, weighted, but also free, like that, like transparent, like no blocks, no barriers, and I can come and go, and I can serve others, and how they react or respond has very little impact on me. I'm just like living out, maybe another way, it's like floating down a river. And sometimes it has bumps and ups and downs, but I'm going with, I'm not moving against, I'm not going upstream, I'm going with it. There's a freedom in that. And it's the freedom of like, not just going where I want it, but going with the flow, going with God's grace. The freedom is to like be moved along by God's grace and not resist and not push and not block and not. And I think that's the kind of thing that ultimately unfolds over the spiritual life. And please God keeps purifying our self-protections and self-preservations, and we enter the illuminative, the purgative way, illuminative way, the unitive way, and we're just have this like radical intimacy with him. So I'm nowhere close to that, but the glimpses I've tasted when I wake up and I try to live the way I think God wants me to live, it's something like that.
Beautiful.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can everyone find you, follow you, and get more?
That's great. So I do have an Instagram page. I'm like terrible on social media, so I post like once a month, maybe. But it's Ask a Catholic Therapist on Instagram, and I'm going to be hopefully starting a podcast, Ask a Catholic Therapist podcast, where I just interview Catholic therapists. I think it'll be pretty exciting. So sort of stay tuned for that. Yeah, but I have a book, Finding Freedom in Christ, Healing Life's Hurt. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it through the St. Paul Center. And I think that's it for now. So Instagram, the book.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can shoot me an email at the Wellspring website if you want to go to Wellspring Counseling and Coaching, if you're ever interested in therapy or therapy services.
Awesome. We will link everything in our show notes so people can find you. And thank you again for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
And
it was
so
great to meet
you
you and talk to you.
Likewise. Likewise.
All right.
Let's do it again, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. All right. Good. God bless.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Yep.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Wannabe Saints podcast.
If you have a question or topic you would like us to cover, reach out to us at wannabesaintspodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram at wannabe_saints.
You can find the link in our show notes.
Thanks for listening, and God bless.